It's Zach Edey with Purdue men's basketball, and you're watching Boilers in the Stands.
There it is, ladies and gentlemen. The news is finally here that we have been waiting for months now. Zach Edey will return for another year of Purdue basketball in West Lafayette. Excited to talk about this tonight. We're back at it. This is Boilers in the Stands. I am your host, Kraig Braggs Jr. Alongside me, as always, is my guys, Kraig Bowers and Joe Jackson. Doing our thing. Aiden will not be here. He has now moved on to greener pastures as a graduate assistant with Incarnate Word men's basketball. His analysis here will be sorely missed, but we are excited for his future as well. But we're here to talk about Zach Edey and the Purdue Boilermakers. The reigning National Player of the Year returns for some more fun in West Lafayette. And I could not be more excited. Brought home a Big Ten championship last year, the most Big Ten championships in conference history, looking to add to that total next year and right some wrongs from March. So I'm going to kick it right around the horn and get some instant reactions. Kraig, this has been one of those questions. We asked it immediately following the gut-wrenching loss in the first round of March Madness. Would he return? At that point, it was a definitive no from everyone around the panel. If you run the tape back, we all thought he would not come back the moment Purdue lost. Maybe we've blacked out since that day, but then as you saw, the roller coaster of predictions and emotions when it came to this decision for Zach, and obviously it was a big one. At times it felt like, oh, he's for sure coming back. And then it got all the way down to 50-50 here today. Kraig, what is your instant reaction to the news here tonight?
It's amazing. And obviously I'm as excited as every Boiler fan out there right now. And this makes us a top 5 contender in the country right out of the gate. We are going to be ranked in the top 5, regardless of what happened in the tournament last year. You saw it with Virginia when they lost in that same setting and brought a bunch of people back, ranked really highly right out of the gate. And I think beyond ranking, this team's just going to be a lot better. Beyond Zach continuing to grow, and let's not forget, he's only played a minimal amount of years, and then you add in all those freshmen that have one more year under their belt. This team is going to be primed to do much, much more this next season.
Yeah, it's I agree. They're going to be a top 5 team. The Big Ten itself had a lot of announcements today with a lot of players returning, which I'm sure we'll get to as this show goes on. And so it just really seems like not only is it going to be another big year for Purdue basketball, but a big year for the Big Ten, Michigan State having both their top guards return. You saw how they did in March. Probably obviously the best turnout of any team, from the Big Ten in March. So it's going to be an interesting year across the board. Yeah, there's our guy Aiden in the chat. Congrats to you, Aiden. Appreciate you tuning in. So, Joe, your instant reaction to the news here tonight, I should say, as we've been waiting all day for it.
Yeah, I spent way too much time on Twitter today, so that we'll start with that. I'm glad tomorrow, with all this news now done, be able to relax a bit, but just excitement for the team next year. I'm still a believer in everything that this team can be. You add more pieces now. You bring in Heidi, you bring in Colvin, you bring in Jones, and obviously two of those, a freshman, a redshirt freshman, and then a senior, a grad transfer. Not guaranteed that you're going to get all the production from them, but potential there to become more athletic. You've heard a little bit about Matt Painter being like, okay, we're going to switch it up a bit. We're going to run a little more pick and roll. We're going to spread it out a bit. But now you bring back the centerpiece to it all. This team goes from top 25, top 30 team with higher upside, depending on how the guards go without Edey, to a top 5 preseason team, a legitimate national contender. Whether, that's the narrative or not, that's what I believe. Everybody we'll talk about FDU, rightfully so, in the past few years, but this is a team that can kind of get rid of the past now. I think they can really do it. I'm going to believe in them all year from it. And I'm just overall, I'm just so excited. I'm so excited to watch Edey play. I'm so excited to see where this offense goes next year.
Yeah. I mean, it's already feeling like the elephant in the room, right? To even say the name Fairleigh Dickinson. I said it. It's tough. We're as Boilers fans, we're going to have to relive that forever. And these players will always have to wear that loss. That's what sports is all about. Failures and victory. And sometimes it can be the worst failure you can ever dream of. But there's only been 2 teams to ever lose to a 16 seed. And the other part of this story that people are going to talk about is the fact that the other one went on to win the national championship the next season. And that was Virginia. And we all know how Virginia got there. Another wound that Purdue will probably never get over until they can slay the inevitable dragon. So this is their story. This is their journey. And you saw Zach Edey put it on Twitter. He said, run it back. And that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to run it back. They bring him back pretty much the entire team. Brandon Newman and David Jenkins are now gone. But the core of this team is still here, bringing in some new guys with Lance Jones. And we'll talk about what this means for the team in its entirety. But the journey, the goal for what these guys to right that wrong, for Matt Painter, who has admitted here in the offseason, there's some changes that he needs to make so they can right some wrongs here in March. And so stylistically, they'll probably be very similar to how they play. But is Matt Painter going to make adjustments? I have the confidence that he will. He's a smart coach, and he understands what we're all seeing. And I think this time around, with the freshman guards now having a year under their belt, becoming sophomores, now you're injecting some athleticism to this team with Camden Hyde and Miles Colvin. It's really exciting, and we can get ahead of it and talk about the roster all we want. But right now, the story is the reigning National Player of the Year is returning. You know how many times you get to say that in your life as a Boilermaker fan? Not many. Enjoy it, folks.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. And I'm sure we'll get into the style and all that and post-ups and pick and roll and spacing, but it's just fun. Like, this is just exciting. Like, I just had a pure, just jolt of adrenaline when I saw the tweet when I saw the tweet and then triple checked that it was a legit source and then realized that it was legit and that he's coming back. Just excitement all around.
I couldn't believe when I finally saw the tweet.
Yeah.
I'm refreshing literally 900 times. I was refreshing probably 50 times an hour earlier in the day. And then it got to a point where it was 50 times a minute here in the last hour.
Yep.
And I have no idea. When I read the tweet, it said it had been posted for 3 minutes. I go, how did I let this tweet get past me for 2 minutes and 48 seconds? This is ludicrous. I couldn't believe it. I definitely set a record for refresh today.
Yeah, from like 5 o'clock on, all I've been doing is sitting on my back porch and hitting that refresh, man. And I was with you. I actually saw the text from Joe that was like, "I'll be good to go in 15 minutes," and I was like, "What's he talking about?" I got one phone call all day long, and that's when Zach Edey announced. Was when I was on the phone with somebody else, and I'm like, "Seriously, man, I missed it now." But man, yeah, you've got to be excited. And anybody that watched Zach's pro day tape, like let's not get too far ahead of ourselves and think that Zach's going to be Steph Curry out there on the 3-point line. But nobody could watch that and think, whoa, like maybe there's another element. And if Zach comes back, maybe there's a little bit of, we're going to work on this part of your game. We're going to let you maybe do a little bit of this and see how that works in the offense. And if it doesn't work, so be it. But, maybe Zach gets to step out off that pick and roll, off that dribble handoff. Maybe he fakes the dribble handoff, turns around, faces up, and shoots a 15 to 18 footer. And then to me, and Joe, I know you and the guy we're not allowed to name on the show anymore talked about this because he's coaching now.
I think we could name him. Yeah, it's not like a bad person. This is just our guy that's,
right.
Coaching now, so.
Him and I thought maybe that opens up some backside things off of that action and whatnot in terms of what they can do. And you roll in Miles Colvin and Cam Heide, who we'll see how much they bring to the offense. But those two guys are completely different than anybody we had on the team this year in terms of the skill set they bring, the physicality, the athleticism, the jumping ability. You put those guys, out on the wings off of that backside action, whatnot, like, man, there's some exciting things that you can get hyped about.
Well, let's focus on it from a Zach standpoint before we branch out into how it affects the rest of the roster, because I really want to keep us hyper focused on Zach here.
My bad.
You talk about it's good. We're all going off into our reservations here because you want to jump ahead because it's so exciting. Now we have a clear vision for what this team will be this year, and it's going to be a very good one. So it's exciting. Nothing to apologize about at all. But the thing I'm curious about, you bring up the 3-point shooting, and this was a point you made a lot last year, Kraig, that made a lot of sense. It's like, yes, he's capable of it. Sasha Stefanovic was on our show and told us this dude can rip threes. Then all of a sudden video evidence started showing out at March Madness and then at the Combine, and now people realize, this guy can do this. This is in his skill set. But the point you always made, Kraig, is like, what did he shoot from the field last year?
Like 60.
Well, Joe, 60.7.
Yeah, that's a Joe question.
Joe, what did he shoot from to put you on the spot here, Stack Guy? What did he shoot from the field last year? It had to be close to 70%.
It was 60.7, and he was like, here, let me see.
60.7 from the field.
And he was 71% at the rim.
71% at the rim. So 7 out of 10 times he is scoring at the rim. So yes, he can shoot threes, but it's so hard to take away a percentage of those attempts when he's shooting threes. Now he's decided to come back. He's trying to up his ante for his NBA stock. Is Matt Painter going to let him branch out into a Travion Williams amount of attempts for threes in a season just to give the defense they're playing a look, and future teams they're going to play next year a look, and be NBA scouts and teams to see that he is capable of doing that in a game?
Yeah, it's tough, and if you want to go, Kraig, I kind of have a whole rant on this whole thing.
No, go ahead. All
right.
If I disagree with you, I'll let you know.
Yeah. I am very much cool with Zach Edey shooting. Like, I see no issue. I don't want people to think that even if he does step out, that in my head, what does it actually solve other than Edey shooting some jumpers? The only thing it really does is it gets the ball in your best player's hands, which is a positive. But then it's like, as I get into it, how is Purdue getting him these shots? Is it a pick and pop? Are you spacing him in the corner? Are you spacing him in a 15-foot, right? Like, It's not if you're spacing him, is that good? Pick and pops, maybe, but even then, you're having him move away from the rim. And he's
how about to that
one
point, not to cut into it, but the Chicago action that you
that
have highlighted so many times as a staple of the Matt Painter offense. We've showed it a million times here on these post-game shows. When they run that Chicago action and they're coming around the curl and Zach's handing that ball off to either the first guy that comes around or the second guy, and they're selling out to the guard, and then all of a sudden Zach's left at the top of the key wide open. Is that the opportunity where Zach can say, okay, if you're going to leave me, I'm going to pop this?
I think that's most likely, because just like thinking about it is you don't want to pull him away from the rim. He's 7'4". He's one of the, per Ken Pom, you look back at individual offensive rebounding percentages, he's like the second best of the past 15, 20 years. And so, yes, it is obviously a positive if he can shoot. There's just no doubt about that. But I'm curious to see if he does, one, how many. I assume it'll be at most 2 to 3 a game jumpers, whether it's 15-footers, threes, whatever. But then it's just how. If he's spacing, if he's popping, is that actually best? Because when he's down at the rim, he's just so dominant rebounding. Now, I will say this. I'm saying all this is he's going to shoot like a 32% three-point ball, and then 45% effective field goal percentage for anybody that cares about that. If he comes in and he's shooting 38% from 3 on 3 attempts a game, take my whole rants and just throw it out the window. And my rant will be Edey 3-pointers are good. But I'm just curious about that because he is so dominant at the rim. He's so dominant on post-ups. He was over a point per possession on all post-ups last year.
And not to mention how many fouls he
and 1.7 points or 1.6 points per possession on rolls. Which if this is an offense that's going to run more pick and roll, you want to get him to the rim. Go ahead, Greg.
I get all of that. I get completely what you're saying. If we only look at Zach's numbers, I agree with you. What are Zach's numbers right at the rim compared to Zach up high? Zach shooting an 18-footer, Zach shooting a 3-pointer. My question is, what does it do for the other 4 guys on the team? If he can show, if I take 5 shots from that range, what does it open up for the other 4 guys playing around him if they have to respect that? If he can shoot 40 to 45% from 15-foot to 3-point range, so that now they don't have to worry about Zach only if he backs down or out, only if he's got his feet in the paint, and they have to worry about him up there as well, then what does that open up for everybody else? And then I think that conversation changes a little bit.
Yeah, but when we asked this question during the season, when Sasha or when the video came out during March Madness that he could shoot these threes, I think for our pregame show or our preview show for the tournament, this conversation we had. And because he shoots 71% from around the rim, what percentage, I'll ask it again because I can remember asking this question to Joe, what percentage would he have to shoot from 3 for the guy to actually step out and guard it? Because as the opponent, if you're playing the percentages, you want him to take that 3, unless what percentage stops you from saying, I want you to take that 3 as opposed to dunking it on me underneath the rim.
And that's kind of, I didn't quite get to that point, but that is the point, is he probably, for teams to realistically actually step out, I would have to think he'd be 35% from 3 on 2 to 3 attempts a game. And maybe he does that. Cause that's my that's my other thing too, is just what actually shifts the defense. If he's just taking wide open threes, it's good if he can make them 100%, but is it just turning into FDU kind of again with the whole team of you just have open threes and you're hoping they go in. And then if that's the case, if it's not shifting the defense, is it better for him just to be at the rim? These are all things we'll find out. If he's a lights out shooter, the whole thing changes. But I think realistically, a good number would be if he got to 33% from 3, let's say, he would have been 4th on the team in 3-point percentage last year, behind Braden Smith, Mason Gillis, and David Jenkins. If you take out Mason Gillis's Penn State game, which I know is not quite fair to do, but if you take that out, he would have been 3rd in 3-point percentage if he shoots 33%. And so, but then if he does that, I don't think defenses react. I think they're just all right, if he goes 2 for 3 from 3 this game, it happens. At least he's not at the rim. But also, I think this whole conversation is for the terms of pure shots. We're talking about, I assume, 3 to 5 possessions max per game, which are important. All possessions are 100% important. But I think, I do think stylistically getting him in space a little bit more, running more pick and roll, and I know that's kind of Kraig's alley, and I can kind of let him run with that. But like stuff like that will be net positive for the team.
I mean, yeah. I thought pick and roll action all year last year. There were so many times where I like, why are we going away from this? Like it worked. Like why break something that's not broken? We're doing it time and again to them. And then it seemed like in the second half, a lot of times last year, we would go back to more of these true set and design plays and take away Braden's creativity and Zach's ability to roll down and just throw a ball up in the air and let him go get it. Man, I hope just through another year and more practice and watching that and thinking about the efficiency of it, that we go to it more. But we'll see, obviously.
Yep. Yeah. And I can pull up the numbers real quick. Pick and roll, 0.79 points per possession last year on when the ball handler shoots. But when you include passes, so it's lobs to Edey, that's kickouts for 3, it was 0.94, which is in the 85th percentile. So, part of that's, you're hoping the ball handler itself was 55th percentile is fine. You're hoping Smith and Lawyer step up in that category. Jones, Colvin maybe can get some. But yeah, a lot of it is just the action itself it didn't create great shots for the shooter, but it created great shots elsewhere, which, I think will be big going forward.
Yeah.
Kraig, I see, because there's an aspect of this Edey conversation that I want to talk about decision wise, but I see some things starred here in our starred comments. Dick Stillwagon brings up TKR gets some post action if Edey is faking out the 3-ball shot.
Last year,
go ahead.
I'm sorry to cut you. Last year they did, when they ran TKR with Edey. Oh, what game was it? It was in the Big Ten play. I'm sorry for forgetting the exact game. It was at home. They ran a little bit of that, and what they would do is they'd have Edey set the screen, and then Braden would come off, and TKR would already be sealing down low. So if Edey can shoot, now that turns into a pick and pop, and you already have TKR sealing. That's an action they already did run last year, kind of from the wing.
Yeah. And Painter if you listen to Painter talk, he is pained by the fact that he didn't find a way to get TKR more minutes, because he is, I mean, if you've listened to Painter enough, when Painter's being serious and really wants something. And when you listen to him, he wants more TKR offensive minutes, but it's how do you do that when you have the National Player of the Year on the floor also? I have a feeling they're going to get creative in terms of how they figure out a way for TKR to score off of Zach and play them together a little bit more, even so than they did this year. But they did it more, I felt like, down the stretch. But it's gonna be hard to say, man, because you bring in that transfer who has no conscience. Whether he's hitting or not is another thing. But I think just the fact that we bring a guy in that is not timid to take a shot is huge. But then you also add in, 2 guys who arguably are better athletes than anybody on the team right now. So I think so much, even though we're only changing really small pieces, like there's so much that could change with what this offense does next year, even off those small pieces.
Well, we'll talk about that quickly. I mean, when we to that point, because I'm bringing up Ryan Sipp's comment, we needed a player like Colvin. Now we have him. Kraig, when he says that, when you say that, talking about guys we did not have on this roster last year, talk about that impact, not only for the team, but how he's able to play off Zach Edey.
Well, it's just a completely different level of athleticism than we've had. Obviously Jaden was crazy athletic. But in terms of last year's team, we didn't have anybody that had a lot of athleticism. And if you watch the tape on Colvin, he's got a good outside shot. One of my questions last year was, does he have that second move? Once he makes his move and he blows by his original ball defender, does he have a second move to continue to the rim? And I think he really developed that this year. And I think that's why you saw him shooting up the board a little bit. He's got some wiggle and a little bit more swagger to his game, getting all the way to the hole. He's a high riser. And then you look at Cam Heide also, like those two guys can jump out of the gym. And Joe and I were joking around with somebody on Twitter, like, just let them both run backside action and see who gets the lob first. Like, I don't know that we've had a leaper like that since maybe like Basil Smotherman. In terms of just hops, both of the Jaden was crazy fast, but those two guys have hops that are nuts.
Yeah, that was with Boiler in Texas, who we have on the screen here now. It's
you got to read it because our podcast listeners won't know what we heard.
He said, "Let me take you on a journey." Zach on one post with the weak side defender sagging all the way over on a soft denial. Heidi then leaps over that dude on a slow recovery to put his arm in the rim. And you saw the play last year a bit. They ran it for first three times, if I remember. I think they were 1 for 3.
Yeah.
Lawyer kind of threw this cross court lob. It was against like Nebraska, maybe Minnesota, and it's basically it would have worked in the FDU game. And that's kind of an interesting thought for me with bringing in this athleticism is, we all know FDU basically triple team Edey off ball and was just like, okay, anybody else beat us and nobody made open threes. Now you have somebody cut to the rim with athleticism like Heidi, like Colvin. You can kind of throw something up, and that's where they would have been. You have him in that weak side corner. His defender basically comes and is playing post defense on Edey while the other guy fronts. They had that, they had that weak side corner, cut to the rim, throw a lob. It didn't quite work with first because the lob wasn't great most times, but with Heidi and Colvin, even first, I still think first is athletic. That's a legitimate counter because I think that's the big thing is you got to find a counter for when you can't get Edey the ball. Last year, Purdue, I think Painter coming in thought it was going to be his players could knock down threes. I think we all thought that, to be honest. It didn't happen, and so now you hope that comes, but you do got to figure something else out too.
Well, yeah. And in fairness to Painter, when he recruited Ivy, nobody at that time thought, well, he's going to be gone at that point. Like that was going to be his athletic dude at that point on the team. That in his mind was probably going into his second year of starting. And then Jaden grew a few inches, just ball skill got a ton better. And all of a sudden he went to a lottery pick. So I think he thought he had that. And don't get me wrong, Jones is not Jaden Ivey, but bringing in that transfer in terms of just like, if you watch the tape on him, he's got some shake and bake to him. He can make a guy miss off that initial step. He's got a second move. Once he gets that first guy to miss, he can get to the rim. He did it against Texas a lot in that in that second half against Texas. Just attack the rim against what was supposed to be a really good Big 12 team and really punish them. So I think not only there's been some criticism, and you're going to see it whenever Greg puts up the quote that we asked for from a couple of other guys. There's been some criticism of Painter in terms of what he did in the portal, but I don't think those guys realize how athletic the redshirt freshman sitting on the bench all year is and how athletic the incoming freshman is. And all three of those pieces are instant athleticism to our team compared to what we have.
Well, let's get into those quotes, and then you can bounce right back off of them. Our guys from Sleepers Media, Kraig reached out to them to see if they would give us quotes here for the show, regarding Zach Edey, and we really appreciate Carter Elliott and Greg Waddle, showing their support to our show, and everything that they're doing over there is great work. So make sure you follow them with the Sleepers Media and, of course, the Field of 68. And Greg Waddle or Waddell, I always say Waddle because of Waddell. Waddell. I always say Waddle because of Tommy Waddle of my Chicago Bears. But Greg Waddell of Field of 68 says, Zach Edey's return keeps Purdue firmly atop the Big Ten, but more importantly gives Matt Painter and this talented Boilermakers roster a shot at national redemption. Edey is the last and best of this decade's run of great Big Ten centers, and with the departures of Trace Jackson-Davis, Hunter Dickinson, Edey's return won't be taken for granted. He could match Luka Garza's back-to-back Sporting News National Player of the Years, but the real goal will be a Final Four or more. Virginia used their 16 seed loss as fuel en route to their national title, rewriting the narratives on Tony Bennett, and Zach Edey's final gift to Matt Painter is a legitimate chance to do the same. Before we get to Carter's quote, your reaction to that one.
Man, if that doesn't give you chills,
yeah,
like just I feel like he took us down a journey of like what happened last year and painting that against the Virginia story, and of course we were part of that Virginia story. But yeah, I mean, he's right. Like Zach has the ability. Him coming back with the pieces we're bringing in around him gives us the opportunity to do similar things. Now, will we do it? I don't know. If Purdue makes it to a Final Four, I think most of our fans are going to be elated enough just from that. I don't know about Greg Braggs, but most of our fans will be elated enough just from getting to a Final Four. And I think that's real opportunity. And I think that's reflective of what most media around the U.S. think about Zach coming back right now.
Yeah. Dick Stillwagon said Painter on field of 68 explains his portal thoughts very well. So make sure you're checking out the work they do over there. Those guys over there do right by us, and we always want to make sure we do right by them. They even made a shirt last year off the quote from Micah Shrewsbury and the video we captured in the press conference room when Micah said best team in the country, best player in the country, best coach in the country. It was pretty cool. Pretty cool little crossover work we did with them. Carter Elliott from Sleepers Media had to say, I think it becomes a 2-horse race for the Big Ten title between Michigan State and Purdue. Obviously, getting the National Player of the Year back for Purdue is huge, but I think the Big Ten will be better as a whole this year. And I'm not the biggest fan of Purdue's offseason in terms of transfers and incoming class. A lot will ride on the development of the freshman backcourt from last year. But when all else fails, there isn't anyone in the country stopping Zach Edey. It just rides on what others around him do. Joe, your thoughts to that quote and a little bit of criticism towards the Purdue program?
I think that's going to be the general sentiment, like the average sentiment. I would say there obviously is going to be up and down depending on the person, but I think there's going to be people that look at Colvin. Didn't play for a big high school. I believe played for an independent AAU, if I remember correctly. So like people haven't seen him a ton. There are questions like I don't think he's a guaranteed come in day one and provide 20 minutes a game. And then Jones, on paper, you look at Jones, he's a 28, you see a 28% 3-point shooter, a dude from, that just has been solid. But the numbers don't like greatly stand out. So you think that he's going to come in and be a bad shooter on a team that didn't shoot well last year. I think that's fair. And I think the MSU versus Big Purdue, it's going to be the talk pretty much all Big Ten, at least going into the season. Once it happens, anything can happen. I know Wisconsin will get, people will talk about Wisconsin some, depending on what happens with Hawkins. Maybe Illinois gets some talk in that as well. Maryland, Northwestern, it's going to be interesting. I think overall, though, that's probably going to be the average sentiment. It's like, hey, Edey's amazing. Purdue, it's going to depend on a lot of developments. They didn't really do anything in the offseason, and they lost to a 16 seed.
Yeah, but I think those people that are saying we didn't really do anything in an offseason also are not looking at the big picture there, because I think everybody's sleeping on Cam. I really do. And maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe he's a 5-10 minute a guy game, 10 minute per game guy this year, but I think people are sleeping on him. I really do. And we have to remember that guy at one point in time, he was like a top 60, top 70 recruit. Then he got hurt. Then he didn't play his senior year. Then he redshirted. It's like everybody kind of forgot a little bit about what he could do when he was recruited or ranked as high as he was.
Yeah.
And also, like you said, Colvin got, I guess, just maybe not as much recognition as he should have because he went to a smaller school. And if you look at the recruiting rankings, he's top 50 across the board until you get to ESPN. And we've talked about this on the show before, but ESPN shouldn't even be the recruiting business anymore. And there's people that are way smarter in the basketball world that are saying that more so than me. But they just don't get out and watch him as much. And Rafael Davis flat out told me that they said the only reason they didn't have him up there is because they hadn't made the time to go see him watch him live yet. Like, I think people are sleeping on him a little bit too. So it's going to be interesting to me. I don't like the narrative about Painter's offseason moves. And I think Lance Jones is probably one of those guys that when you look at him in terms of, he's not a flashy name that was out there, but he's not bringing somebody in to start over Braden Smith.
Right.
Like Painter was not going to do that. But he's a guy, like I said, that appears to have no conscience. Will take a shot no matter when it is. And we needed a guy like that last year. He's got some shake. He's got some athleticism. I think there's a good chance he could be a really good fit for this team.
Yeah, it's just going to be about Matt Painter's feel of when he's got the hot hand and riding that. Because I talked to Mark Silverman from ESPN 1000. And he's a big Salukis guy, Saluki alum, went to a lot of games last year, watched this guy play up close. And he was like, boom or bust. This guy can be a microwave and just go crazy for you. And then there'll be other days where he's taking 30 shots and missing 25 of them. But in this offense, he's not going to do that. You know,
well, and Greg, you said, hold on. You said something really important there. You said this offense and right. Whatever, you know, Ant Wright, to his credit, he pieced out his tape and said Lance Jones on coming off screen actions for catch and shoot threes shot like 40% last year, even though his actual 3-point percentage was, what'd you say it was, Joe? Like mid-20s or high 20s?
26 or 28.
Right. But basically running the same action that Carson Edwards ran over and over again. I think what do you call that? Zoom action, Joe, where you come around and...
Zoom is the same thing as Chicago.
Okay, whatever.
Down into a handoff.
Right. But when you're coming off and you're peeling off those screens, you're catching a pass, you're popping that three, which we do over and over and over again for our guards. He shot incredibly well. And we know that Painter's an analytical guy. And you can't tell me that he didn't like piece through that and be like, oh, the type of threes we want him to shoot, he shoots extremely well versus just coming up and dribbling and trying to get a one-on-one move and pop a three on his own. So
I don't know if I should be that guy. This is a really happy, positive show. I'm going to do it for Aiden because I know we talked about it. That is true. He was 1.316 points per possessions off screen. So it's like a catch and shoot off screen type of on 19 possessions.
That was only 19.
Yeah, that was what Ant didn't include in that. So on a very small sample size, he was very good. And I think your point still completely stands. Just want to throw the caveat like, hey, he did it on a small sample size because the number guy in me just felt the urge to.
Yeah. Darn statistics guy.
I know.
Joe, we're not allowed to say. Wait, we're not allowed to say.
Jay's Laura.
We're not allowed to say Aiden anymore, Joe.
We're not allowed to say Aiden. Yeah, because I warned him.
Friend of the show.
Right, because they said Incarnate Word, and I'm pretty sure Purdue played Incarnate Word a couple years ago. And I warned him, like, you know, that's fine. I'm rooting for your success, Aiden. But if Incarnate Word and Purdue play in March Madness and something goes wrong, I'm never speaking to you again. It's just that's how that's gonna go. Jay's Lara made a funny comment in our chat from Facebook. Jay's Lara, no one needs your opinion, motherfucker. Okay, Jays. Well, then you can leave. I don't really care. But you did make me chuckle. So
who did they say that to?
I think he was talking to us, but I don't know. But it made me laugh, so I had to give him a shout out. Thank you for making me laugh, Jays. Yeah, so like I said, a very similar to David Jenkins' role, but as you mentioned, maybe in his specific role, he can thrive in that because of the specific type of 3-point shots that he's good at taking. Yes, please follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Subscribe on our YouTube channel. We have a couple hundred people watching here on YouTube. Please hit the like button for us on this show link. We wanted to go live for you as soon as this news hit. Subscribe for us. That stuff really helps what we're trying to build here at Boilers in the Stands. We will continue to give you guys as good a coverage as we possibly can here for basketball season, maybe even football season here coming up. We've been a strictly basketball podcast here, but There's been some talks developing about potential football coverage here at Boilers in the Stands, and a lot of big announcements and new things to come. So please hit that like, subscribe button, follow us on Twitter, follow us on our Facebook page, all that stuff. So we appreciate everybody's support. The final question that I had in regards to just Zach Edey, and then if we want, I know we've already kind of branched into different players, and we could probably talk for 3 hours now that we're so excited about this. And I'm happy to talk as long as you guys want and as long as the chat wants to hang. But the other question I had in regards to this was his decision, because everybody had different opinions as to why, if he left for the NBA, why would that be? Or if he stays, why is that? People, somebody tweeting at me, well, he wasn't going to get drafted. That's probably not necessarily true. Why would he wait all the way until the final minute like this? Did he already know for a week? Was he leveraging like some other players? We read that Coleman Hawkins was potentially with Illinois, was potentially leveraging towards, leaving just to get Illinois to put out more money. I don't know what his official announcement ended up being, if he's staying or going. So, maybe that's why you wait, and that's kind of where I wanted to take this was, there's a big money thing at play, and NIL. It was reported that Zach Edey made close to $1 million last year. That's all reported. Nothing that we know for certain here, but things that people have put out there in the atmosphere. So take it for what you will. You can take it with a grain of salt, but at the same time, he certainly was getting paid. Now he's going to obviously get paid a lot more. So when you talk about this decision for Zach, Joe, what do you think was the emphasis behind it? How much do you think the money played a factor? Obviously, it was a big factor. How much is it that he's trying to up his stock, as a basketball player? How do you rank this, or how do you evaluate his thought process trying to get behind and inside the mind of Zach?
First, I don't know if any of us can, but from the outside, like, my thoughts is kind of, I think if he had and everything that was kind of reported, if he had a guaranteed deal, he was going. I think he would have got two-way contracts, probably, maybe a late second round, things like that are partially guaranteed. I know it's not like NFL where money's partially guaranteed, but you can do kind of contracts like that. But I think if he got guaranteed, he would have gone. I think he comes back just to try to develop more. The money, it's not entirely my cup of tea. He's going to make a lot, I assume. It seems like he can, make money. Purdue has done everything they kind of can. I think with Purdue, just from how everything's sounding on the outside, right? Like, I think it's a different situation than Hawkins per se. Like, Hawkins, it kind of was reported like Illinois offered him more money to come back. Anybody that knows me knows I do love Coleman Hawkins. I'm a big fan, even with all the ups and downs that he brings. Edey's a different player, right? Edey's a national player of the year at Purdue. Like, I don't think it's Purdue like, hey, we'll give you more money. Like, Purdue is taking their Europe trip. Purdue is playing a game in Toronto. They've kind of already done their stuff for like, hey, like go make your money. I think it truly just was a decision for him of, is going this year the best? Can I come back and improve and then work next year to get a guaranteed deal? I truly think it was coming down to that. And, the people that said that, or maybe he has known for a while. I truly don't think he did. I truly don't think he knew until, 5 hours ago at most. Like, I think he was probably going back and forth this whole time. That's just my guess though. And none of us will ever really know, but it is fun to speculate.
My thing that I've told everybody that's asked me, and I've been asked a ton, the other night, it became laughable because like 6 people in a row, like in order, asked me, and like each person was there to hear the next person ask me my thoughts. And it was a thought on everybody's mind, right? And anybody that they thought might have a clue, they wanted to ask the question to you. But the thing that I've always said, if you listen to our interview with Zach, if you listen to our interview with Julia, they're both very pragmatic people. If you listen to how they chose to come to Purdue, all of that her engineering background, their pragmatic nature, they were going to take it all in and they were going to weigh all the options. And that's why it went till the end, because if for Zach, in my mind, I'd love to hear him on this, but in my mind, it was more about fit than maybe where he ranked in terms of where people saw him going in the draft. Because if somebody said, we truly believe in you, like let's say with the 40th pick, but we're going to give you a 2-year deal, and this is how we envision developing you for our NBA program, I think he goes. Like, I think if he felt like he had the right situation to actually make it in the NBA, he probably goes. Because they just have that really pragmatic way of looking at things and solving decisions about what's the best for their future. And I just, my guess is they were waiting to the wire to see if there was a team that was going to say, this, we're definitely going to do it. We're going to pull the trigger. Here's the guaranteed money. And this is how we see you. Maybe it's only 10 to 15 minutes a game, but this is how we see using you. And that leads to you playing 3, 4, 5 years in the NBA. And then maybe you develop into more. And my guess is that just guarantee wasn't there. The other thing we don't know about is he's applying for that work visa, right? So like, where is that? And with the NIL money, if he gets that work visa, that might go from $800,000-$900,000 to $2 million. Well, where's that in process? Because if they got a good feel that work visa is getting approved, then that changes the NIL money, which then changes the dynamic with the NBA money. So,
well, and
I think
didn't Oscar Tshiebwe, when they took a trip last year to play, that's how they were able to do the backdoor way of getting him more money. And Purdue is playing in Zach Edey's hometown of Ontario, Canada. Yeah. So is it, with the visa and the fact that they're going to Ontario, an opportunity for them to pay him that way too?
Well, obviously, that was a complete, please come back, Zach.
That was probably the big, and that was at one, when they announced that, excuse me, when they announced that was like one of the first tells, like, oh, he's coming back, and I just think in regards to his combine, people saw the shooting and the different drills where he's showing, his athleticism and skill set. At the end of the day, as much as people think, oh, he needs to show he can shoot from the elbow or shoot from the baseline or shoot a couple from three-pointer, to play in the NBA, he's got to show he can play defense.
Yeah, the shooting isn't the limiting factor. If he gets switched out on a guard or a wing, right, can he hold his own at least long enough for somebody to recover or whatever? And I don't know that. No matter what he does next year, I don't know that that's going to change his draft order dramatically.
Right.
Somebody's just got to buy into him. But we got our dude. Greg,
yeah,
we got our dude in the waiting room.
Yeah, for sure. I see him down there, and I was just going to say, when you talk about guarantees, there's no guarantee in the draft process because you have to, have an opportunity. You don't know who's going to fall in the draft either. So you could say, oh, we're going to draft you, and then somebody else falls to you. So we're going to bring on our special guest here. But before we do, I did want to give a quick shout out to our guys over at FanBags. So this instant reaction special, Zach Edey special, is brought to you by FanBags Cornhole, Chicago's official supplier of professional cornhole boards and bags. Choose from any of their officially licensed designs or have my boy Brian design a custom set using anything from a selfie to your company's logo. Visit www.fanbagscornhole.com and use the promo code BRAGS to get 10% off your entire order. That's www.fanbagscornhole.com and use the promo code BRAGS to get 10% off. Step up your game with FanBags Cornhole. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. And our guy, Bobby Buckets, Bobby Riddell, brought him out from summer slumber to talk some Boilermakers basketball. Zach Edey returns to West Lafayette. We couldn't be more excited here. The chat is certainly fired up. Got about 200 live viewers watching right now. Bobby, what was your instant reaction to the news, and how long have you known, and why didn't you tell us?
I wish I knew for a long time and was able to sit on it, because I was just as nervous as everyone else today. Waiting on the news, it was killing me, just like everyone else. Definitely was hopping online, refreshing the social media and all that sort of stuff, checking the phone, seeing if any texts came in. And it was pretty evident. It appeared that Zach, didn't really know. Was obviously taking in all the information and waiting as long as he possibly could until he was gonna, figure out what the right decision was for him as far as whether to stay or to go. And it took all the way till the end, and I'm happy that he's going to be wearing the black and gold again one more year at least. And it's going to be super exciting to see this team, for all intents and purposes, run it back, plus add a couple extra pieces in. And so it should be a lot of fun. Obviously, they accomplished a lot of great things last year. We already talked about how it, unfortunately ended not how they wanted to, but considering all they accomplished last year to bring basically that whole team back, plus sprinkle in some new additions, it's going to be a lot of fun to see what they can accomplish next season.
And you said I caught it. You said at least 1 year. We might be able to get to do this all again next year.
Does have a 2 years?
That's
that was going to be
right
my
now problem.
That was going to be my surprise question at the end. I just didn't want to sound like an idiot after we waited all these months just to get him to come back for 1 year. Are we getting greedy and hoping, or let's go around the room then, since you brought it up. Joe brought it up too. We predicted, we made our predictions at the end of the year. Would he come back next year? Let's make him again. I don't care that we're skipping an entire season. Will he play after next season at Purdue? I'll start with you, Bobby.
Well, it's probably a long shot at this point, considering, it felt like a pretty 50-50 deal this year. But, if as far as if the numbers make sense from a financial standpoint, which is kind of everything he's said as he's gone through this process, I certainly think the style of play and the number of touches he's going to get is going to favor him if he stays at Purdue for as long as possible. So that part is always going to play in Purdue's favor as far as the style of play, as far as the chances for him to rack up awards and wins and accolades and all those sorts of things. While he's playing at Purdue, he's going to be the featured player for as long as that lasts. So that part Purdue will always have in its favor. And certainly the style of play in college, where the big man is still thriving compared to essentially any professional level. If you're not Nikola Jokic or Joel Embiid, and you can shoot threes and handle like a guard at that size, pretty much the back to the basket center from the days of old is pretty much dead at the professional level. So,
well, I'll let you two answer that to end our show. It's more of a tongue-in-cheek question. It's a joke. I mean, obviously we'd love for him to stay as long, because we just enjoy watching him play, but we also want him to achieve his NBA dreams. I think that the bigger question in that regard, the reason it's a tongue-in-cheek question, but the thing that is serious that I want to understand and maybe try to pick your brain from what you've heard, because NIL was so new last year. And there's a lot of moving parts trying to understand how this is going to work, especially for a guy like Zach Edey, as Kraig pointed out, trying to get the visa and all these different, hoops he has to jump through to make this kind of money. At the end of the day, it comes down to the money. So what have you heard about how the NIL program with Purdue is evolving and their ability to give money to players that they want to keep and deserve it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know all the ins and outs necessarily, but just some of the things I've heard, that the money pool that's going to the players from the Boilermaker Alliance, I believe that's growing from last year to this year. So just from that standpoint, from 1 year to the next, that sort of stuff is increasing for the players. And then certainly the players on this team, the amount of winning they've done the last couple of years, the notoriety is increasing. And I think their opportunities outside of just what they can get through the Boilermaker Alliance is growing as well. I mean, I think we saw a number of players last year picking up, additional NIL deals outside of just the stuff that's through the Boilermaker Alliance. So obviously a player like Zach Edey, you win National Player of the Year, you're going to have a lot of popularity. And I think his opportunities are probably endless, as far as his notoriety and some of the companies that are potentially reaching out to have him involved. I mean, I don't know all the, behind the scenes stuff there, but it certainly appears from afar that, he's someone who is desired. I just was watching TV yesterday, and I think it was the Game 7 of the Celtics Heat, and there was a Zach Edey commercial that came on with one of the car dealerships here in town during the break. And so he's obviously out there, and it's very cool that that NIL stuff is around to allow a guy like Zach to come back. Oscar Tshiebwe last year, back-to-back National Player of the Year is coming back. I mean, when I was playing, guys of that caliber were not coming back. So
right, it helps the sport. I mean, we don't have any commercials yet for Boilers in the Stands out on television broadcast, but we're working towards that goal. We got to get Bobby paid first before we get any money in Zach's pocket. But you see how much Bronny James, LeBron's son, I think he's making $6 million with USC. So if you're a notable name, the opportunity for how much you can make is quite large. Obviously, Bronny James being probably the largest, the biggest extreme to that example. But I was curious about how this is going with NIL, and obviously it must be going decently well for Zach to, agree to come back. And, you saw the rumblings with Cannon Catchings, and he's obviously, his star is rising as a prospect coming here. So I know Purdue fans are certainly, have their ears up to this conversation, because you have to be able to keep up with the IUs of the world and Michigan State and Michigan. So that was my question to you. I'll kick it around the horn, and I'll start with Kraig. Go ahead, my man.
I'm sorry, give me the question.
He was reading.
I thought you were asking a question to Bobby.
No, I already asked like 3. And this isn't a one-on-one interview. You guys are here. I'm sorry for.
I was actually looking it up, because I did not think that Bronny was the highest paid off NIL. I actually thought that was a gymnast from LSU.
No, it's the girls, right? Girls basketball.
Yeah.
They're cleaning up.
Livy Dunn or something, I think, for LSU.
Yeah, no, it's a gymnast. It's not a basketball player. She's the highest paid NIL deal. But anyway. I just wanted to give the women their shout out there, Greg. That's all. That they're highest in.
Isn't that crazy though? Too, it just goes to show you. I mean, and I think that has to do with their social media followings too.
Yeah.
But hey, more power to them. But it certainly is an interesting development with the NIL, that it's actually the girls that are leading the charge for most money in their pocket.
Right. I know for sure. So give me that question one more time while I was looking that up.
I didn't have a question. I was just letting you go so you could ask Bobby a question. So I can
tossing the ball into your court, basically.
First question.
The off season for everyone. We're rusty.
So my first question, Bobby, is this a conscious effort to grow your hair out, or have you just not had time to cut it?
Good question. Good recognition there. Yes, I am growing the hair out. As in everything with us married men, happy wife, happy life. And the missus likes the hair a little longer. So that's what we're rolling with.
I got you. I noticed there was a little more hanging off the side there. So
do you go to a barber, or are you still a salon guy? Be honest.
I mean, I used to always kind of just be the sport clips, great clips, just get on in real quick and get out. But I'm been going recently to a lady downtown my wife found for me. So.
All right. Oh, she found it. See, because I got a barber, and once I found my guy, and hey, girl, guy, whatever, you find your person.
Yeah,
that's the right
like
way
the consistency there.
Yeah.
So Bobby, Joe and I were going back and forth for like 2 weeks on this, and then also on the show tonight about if Zach can turn and face and shoot a 15, 18 footer, whether that opens up things for other players on the court, or whether they just ignore Zach and let him shoot that, and that doesn't change what a defense does. Do you see, after you watch that pro day where Zach is just like drilling threes like he's friggin' Steph Curry out there, apparently, when you watch that, do you say, okay, if Zach can, maybe not even a 3-pointer, but if he can turn and shoot a 15-footer, 18-footer off some of the action that we run, do you see that opening up things for other people on the court as well?
Well, I think
or is it not worth it for him to do?
I mean,
that?
Certainly initially, teams would allow him to shoot that at will, of course, until he proved he could make it. But like Caleb Swanigan did say his sophomore year, when you start making above 40%, defenses have to honor that, of course. And yes, at that point, that would open the lane up if his man did have to come out and take that away. And that would free the lane up for cutters and for driving lanes and all those sorts of things. But for a guy that's never attempted a three, for all of a sudden him to be able to like take and make them at a high enough percentage and a high enough volume to warrant a defense even adjusting to that, that's probably far-fetched, but it would be great if that's what transpired. Obviously, I saw that video like you guys did, that the shot, I think we've all felt like he's always had a pretty nice free throw shooting form, nice high release, good arc, good follow through, all that sort of stuff. He shot a reasonably good percentage for a big guy, but yeah, the 15-footer would probably be more realistic, right? Like turn and shooting 15-footer, but
right,
kind of like you hinted at, you got to make like Chris Paul, Kevin Durant level percentages on those mid ranges to like justify some of the offensive efficiency stuff that Coach Paint and those guys are really, in depth with. So,
well, and like we talked about before you came on, I know you were at your kids' practice, but I think the one place to me, just initially thinking about this, where it makes sense is something that Joe has highlighted with his dry erase board so many times, explaining the Chicago action and how that's a staple to this offense and how Zach's at the top of the key and they run around Zach and head back towards the rim. And there's always like one or two guys that come around that corner. And most of the time they're selling out on the guard, making sure they're not going to give up the layup. And one guy stays with Zach. But now if he pops back, I think that's the one place where it does make sense to give that look a couple times to where the center that's guarding Zach has to respect to step back and not just constantly play drop coverage. Does that make sense? Or am I just shooting over my skis on something that Joe should be asking?
No, I mean, certainly Zach is going to be wide open if he wants to pick and pop all day long if he wants to. Teams are not going to guard him out there. But yes, like through the first 10 games of the season, because if Zach in practice and in scrimmages, inter-squad scrimmages, if Zach is picking and popping and like making open threes, if Coach Paint's letting him attempt those, which maybe if Zach works on his game and shows in practice that he can make some, maybe Coach will start letting him do it a little bit in inter-squad scrimmages, exhibition games, so on and so forth. And then if he does make 8 out of 12 in the first or 7 out of 12, something like that in the first 10 games of the season, then yes, teams might start actually, when he pops, going with him, and that would free up some driving lanes. But if I was coaching the opposition, I would make Zach Edey make a lot of open shots before I started adjusting my scheme to him from a pick and pop scenario.
And I think
will Painter allow it? Because that's my other question. Like, Painter's so regimented in his system. And now people said, well, if Zach comes back and works on his game in these specific areas, maybe that'll help up his draft stock. Is there any part of Matt Painter as a coach that is worried about maybe the most prolific player he's ever had in his tenure and what his draft stock means? Is there an element of his calculation of how he draws up his system this year to throw Zach a bone to say, yeah, you can do this, to show the scouts and help him out in any way? Or is he solely focused on winning the basketball game?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Paint's going to change anything for like one individual's, draft stock for like from a skill set standpoint. If that player wants to work on that skill set and get really good at it and show Coach that he can do that through practice, through scrimmages, things of that nature, then Coach might, be reluctant to allow that player to shoot them in games. Coach is definitely a player-friendly guy as far as like, hey, if you prove to him you can shoot, I mean, we had a lot of guys last year who unfortunately didn't shoot great percentages, but they were allowed to keep shooting open shots because they had proven to Coach Painter over the course of time that they could make them at a percentage Coach Painter felt highly about. Well, if Zach is able to do that, and if they have those discussions, and maybe Zach says like, "Hey, Coach, what about in some of these exhibition games, inter-squad scrimmages, maybe even a couple of those home games against lesser teams? Maybe Zach's able to convince Coach to let him take one or two, and if they go in, then maybe he's allowed to keep doing it. But as it turns out, making threes in a workout wide open is a whole lot different than making them in a game-like scenario with game pressure. So if Zach is able to implement that and make them in the games with Coach Painter's blessing, then I think we can start to talk about what defenses will do from that standpoint.
For sure.
And I think the other component to all this, and this is obviously we're being more Edey-centric because he's back, but the other component is what leaps do Smith and Lawyer take? Can Colvin run pick and roll? Can Jones come in and run pick and roll? If teams are cool, just either hedging against Lawyer, which is what happened last year towards the end, just hedge against Lawyer, took him out. If teams are cool going under on Smith, then maybe they do step out on Edey more. Even if he is shooting not great, just because it's like, okay, we can, we trust our one-on-one guy with Smith. If he's not going to get to the rim on him, so we don't need to send extra help. There's that component too that kind of goes with it, no matter what Edey does. Other guys will have to be able to do stuff as well, even to make teams pay, even though obviously Edey is the main focus of the offense.
No doubt. And I mean, just in that clip right there, the idea of surrounding Zach with high quality shooters that are more proven and have done it for a longer time and in theory can make a higher percentage than Zach is like, you saw Zach on that dive right there on the screen. Like, as he's diving to the rim, he sucks in so much attention and so many defenders. So like Caleb first at the top of the key right there, as you can see, and even Ethan racing behind, like they're wide open. And even that was poor defense because Brady still was able to get to the rim and score. But that's the idea of surrounding Zach with guys who can really knock down shots, because when Zach dives to the basket, he's going to draw 2 and 3 defenders because he's so big. If you don't swarm him, he's going to be able to catch Braden would throw those little lob passes up and Zach catches it and finishes. So it's really tough because like you were talking about, Braggs, like, yes, if Zach could make some threes in games, that would be great for his pro profile. But ideally, you're going to have other guys who have shot a lot more threes in their career, have proven to make higher percentages, and then Zach can draw that attention and then have those guys shoot the open shots and make them. We'll see.
I mean, that was the thing with FDU. It's just you missed open shots. They got so many open threes, right?
He drew all the attention in the world, and we just didn't make shots that day.
Happened Nebraska too. And then Lawyer just took off. But
Davidson.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Well, Brad Prather came in with a hot take, and he actually knows why Zach Edey made his decision. Greg, So apparently, Brad is saying that Zach talked with Dan Dockage personally and decided not to leave. And I think all Purdue fans can agree that's the most likely scenario.
I agree.
Yeah, it's nice of Double D to help out the Boilers.
Yeah, well, I think Double D needs all the help he can get lately.
Yeah, no kidding. So my only question to what you guys are saying, Bobby and Joe, would be, if all of that is true, then why in the hell are 5s and stretch 4s that can even shoot 35% from 3 in the NBA so sought after? Like if we're going to say, well, like, yeah, it's not that big of a deal that he can hit some threes and, maybe let him hit some threes, whatever. But when you look at the next level, like, that is the most sought after thing right now is stretch 5, stretch 4s that can bang threes, even if it's not at a 40% level, but just do it consistently enough.
I think
so. What's the difference?
It's the volume with it. It's if it's 1-3 a game, especially with how in terms of college, like Edey is so insanely dominant inside the paint that even if a 3 goes in, I think a team's happy with it. Like if Edey shoots one, unless if we're halfway through and he's shooting 40% or something dumb on 3, 4, 5 attempts a game, then teams are going to switch. But like in my head, it's just, I just can't think of a scenario where a team is like, yeah, we need to defend Edey out on the perimeter so that way we can give him a chance at the rim. That for me, it's just
Right.
even at the NBA, if he shows it, goes to the NBA, I think it's just he's going to have to prove it, and if he doesn't prove that he can shoot insanely well on decent volume, teams probably aren't going to respect him either. I don't see that happening. That's
Yeah,
kind of.
I think it's a lot of it's also about like generating open looks, right? Like in college, if we like the year Matt Harms took some threes that one year, like and
Travion took a couple his senior year.
Yeah,
So did Caleb did too.
and honestly, like those teams, like that Matt Harms team in particular, like that team struggled offensively. So sometimes the Matt Harms open three was like the best look you're going to get. Like this Zach Edey team last year, like doesn't struggle to get open looks. Like we talked about FDU, like guys are getting wide open shots all game long. Zach is so dominant down low. In the NBA, like those post players in the NBA, unless they're the truly elite guys, I think from an efficiency standpoint, they just don't score enough to warrant shooting a lot of those twos. And so those open threes at those 35% are great. And I think those bigs that can shoot them, a lot of times that's the best open look you might get in the NBA because they double Steph Curry, they double Dame Lillard, they double these ball handlers that are so good. The big guy is shooting the open shot. And if he can defend on the other end and rim protect, a guy who can make 35% is great. But on this Purdue team, a Zach Edey open three, in theory, isn't our best percentage shot because we can have other guys who shoot wide open shots, or Zach dominate down low. I think some of it is just like the quality of shot you get in the NBA sometimes. That Brook Lopez three is better than a Giannis double team step back or whatever.
Yeah.
And for the record, I was thinking through that as like a fan watching what the NBA is giving for feedback to these big men. Yeah. I didn't necessarily believe that when I was asking the question. So
fair. That was a good question.
And the other aspect of this, how he can help his draft stock. If he gets in the NBA and gets to live out his dream and find a role in the NBA, the odds of him being a starting center are small, in my opinion. Could he find a role on a team? Absolutely. Could he be a specialty weapon off the bench for a team in the playoffs or an NBA Finals contending type team? I honestly could see it because he's unguardable at the rim, 71% at the rim, as Joe stated. The real question that scouts are probably having with him isn't can you shoot a few threes? It's can you play defense? Can you keep up with these guards? As Kraig has alluded to so many times on this show, when they're switching and putting you up in ISO, can you move your feet fast enough? So that's the question, to move it to the other side of the ball for him. Is there anything he can do this year? And obviously there has to be, but what can he do this year to help his stock with drafts, NBA draft scouts and teams, showing that he can play defense at the next level?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Greg, because I think it's fun talking about the offense and the threes and all that stuff, but the real question is the defensive side of the ball, to your point about what he can show. And I think it's really interesting. Like, you know, some of those agility numbers he had at the combine with the shuttle and, you know, the vertical leap and just all the athletic stuff that he ended up testing, I believe much better than, you know, people maybe anticipated. I believe some of his numbers with all those testing, you know, came back pretty similar to what a lot of the Lopez's and some of those bigs in the NBA test at. And, you know, maybe a lot of those guys that play that had those similar numbers, maybe they play drop coverage in the NBA from a ball screen standpoint. I'm sure a lot of them do, but maybe some of them also get out and hedge at times more traditionally. That would be something I'd be curious of to see next year, like what the staff does with him defensively, because obviously last year we saw it was just drop coverage with Zach from a ball screen standpoint all the time because, you know, a number of factors, of course. One, it helps him keep him out of foul trouble, not being out there sliding his feet against quick guards where he can pick up ticky-tack fouls. So, it, you know, takes him out of foul trouble. It forces teams into hopefully taking, you know, contested mid-range twos that a lot of guys, you know, don't shoot great. It's a low percentage shot from an efficiency standpoint, all those sorts of things. You know, it helps him protect the rim. And obviously just his lack of lateral foot speed compared to maybe other quicker guys, it was kind of just a schematic thing. Well, you know, if he's able, you know, to continue to get, you know, quicker, more athletic, trimmer, you know, his body looks as good as it's ever looked. Maybe next year they're able to experiment a little bit with his ball screen defense and see if he can get out there and even flat hedge a little bit. Like, a guy like Jalen Hood-Schifino, who really went off on us. If Zach had that ability to, get out there and do more of a flat hedge, traditional hedge, just try to push Jalen Hood-Schifino, away from the basket as he comes off those ball screens. Not
like you see Caleb First do so many
right.
times.
Yep.
Exactly. If he's able to do that to some degree, that would be huge for Purdue's defense, just to be able to mix it up against certain guys like a Jalen Hood-Schifino, who just is a killer in the mid-range. Now you have an alternative ball screen coverage. And I think what maybe could work in Purdue's favor is not only Zach hopefully being more athletic, being quicker than maybe he's been in the past, but also some of the depth behind Zach. If Zach picks up 2 ticky-tack fouls, now you have sophomore Trey Kaufman-Wren, you have a junior Caleb First, senior Mason Gillis. You have all these guys who are super experienced in the front court that maybe you would feel more comfortable if Zach got a couple fouls that you could survive. Whereas going into last year, there was a lot more question marks regarding how we were going to survive if Zach was off the floor. So maybe that would allow the staff to get a little bit more aggressive with his ball screen coverage, but that's also just going to come down to what Zach can show in practice and all that sort of stuff. But it would be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing with the defense is, can he become any sort of versatile? That flat hedge, like you said, or at the level, whatever you want to call it, that's what's probably would be the next step. I don't know if he'll ever have the foot speed to full hedge, right. But he also, what do you have, a 7'10.5" wingspan or whatever? And
all you need to do is make that ball handler
just
go away from the basket just a little bit. Because if that gives that guy guarding the ball enough time to square up the ball handler.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that's where, and I think he does a good job using his arms. I don't know if you agree on that on defense, or at least for the most part. I think if he got tired, he kind of dropped a bit, but even in his drop, I think he used his arms well. And I think that's where a lot of it will come from too, is kind of masking that foot speed with, using his 7'10" wingspan, which is just nuts to say out loud.
And that's the thing I was going to say. Combine that foot speed that he did have in those agility drills with his length. Like we did see a couple of times last year. I remember in the Michigan State game, he got switched on to Tyson Walker one time, and he chased him down from behind and blocked a shot when he was going in for a layup, when he was one-on-one with him. And like, you got to combine those two things. So like whatever his speed is different than most people, because he can jump from another foot back and still block that shot potentially from behind or whatever. But I think where JHS got him is he froze him in mid-range. Like he was better trying to recover on guards that try to go all the way to the hole than those
more
guys
that like
that would
floater, that
right.
range there, right at the rim. Yeah.
Well, and
maybe that comes with some experience too.
Right, but it also speaks to, you got to give Jalen Hood-Schifino credit too. Dude's a shot maker, and he wasn't. A lot of guys wouldn't shoot when Zach was around because he disturbed them so much. I mean, that's what people were saying. Well, Zach's not in foul trouble. Well, people are afraid to attempt anything around him because they feel like their shot's going to get blocked. And to Jalen Hood-Schifino's credit, he wasn't afraid to knock down some shots, big shots at Mackey and at Assembly Hall. And I've always said that I felt Zach's perimeter defense, when a guy, like everybody's like, oh, a guy's going to drag him out to the 3-point line and just shoot a 3 on him. I've always felt his defense on those is underrated for the same point Kraig is saying. He's not your average defender. He's tall. So even if you've got a couple steps of space between you, he's almost 8 feet tall. You got to shoot over him still. So, he's going to disrupt your shot pretty much no matter what. You got to really shake him to get a look. Now, Fairleigh Dickinson, to me, the best way to go at him is the way Fairleigh Dickinson did, the way Northwestern did at Northwestern. Just go straight at him when you're going to the rim and do that. Use the hoop to your advantage. Go up and under. Use that rim to block what his advantage is, and that's blocking you. And play that game by going straight into the Lions' teeth. That to me is the way you do it. So, to me, the perimeter stuff is I think you kind of get lulled into that if you're an opposing team. It's when you are aggressive at him, he's going to have to show that he can move his feet and keep up with some of those shifty guards. So that was my observation.
Greg, one of the questions we keep getting in the chat is what happens to TKR, First, Gillis, and Berg behind Zach now that Zach's coming back. And I've
Yep.
seen that. I've seen that maybe 10 times now.
Yeah, it's definitely a point that we haven't touched on that I definitely wanted to is this effect. Is anyone going to transfer out? One, and two, if not,
Well, it's too late if they're not a grad.
Yeah,
transfer.
I mean the window's closed as far as if they want to
Okay.
play right away next year.
all right. Yeah, see, I didn't know that. And maybe there's some people that tune in that also didn't know that. Maybe I should know that because I'm covering the team, but I don't know that. So that's why we bring the experts.
You were letting us
on.
bring it up.
Exactly. You know, and you know, the other aspect, since they can't transfer out, is, you know, how does it affect their roles on the team? Bobby, I'll start with you when it comes to specifically Willie Berg. Everybody's interested to see how he does when he comes in, and then First and Mason and these guys and the bigs around him. How does and TKR obviously, how does their roles evolve with Zach Edey?
Sure. Well, you know, certainly once again, Zach's going to be the main man there and the focal point and play the lion's share of the minutes at the 5 position, and rightfully so. You know, certainly because of some of that depth and experience now behind him, you know, maybe they're able to scale his minutes back to some degree, but he's the best player in the country, and so he's certainly going to play every minute he can handle, especially in close games, of course, if he's effective. But maybe those guys behind him, maybe they play better with the opportunities they get, and then they get longer leashes and play even longer, and allow Zach to maybe play closer to that 30 minutes versus, say, 35 or so. But, you know, time will tell on that. And, you know, I think Willie Berg, obviously coming off a redshirt year, unfortunately, you know, injuring his foot late in that season and going to miss the whole summer. You know, the likelihood of him cracking that, you know, front court rotation is probably unlikely. But, you know, if he's able to come back healthy and, you know, play well in practice enough to crack that rotation, that's obviously a great problem to have for Purdue. But, you know, I would guess you're going to see those same 4 guys in the rotation in the front court. Maybe even a guy like Camden Heide, Brian Waddell, someone like that. Maybe they get some run at the 4 spot if you're going small. But I think those other, you know, the Mason, Caleb, you know, TKR and Zach are going to play probably the lion's share of those 2 front court spots, with Zach, of course, playing the 5 only. And then I think those other 3 guys, man, it's a Royal Rumble probably for who's going to, you know, win the starting 4 spot and who's going to, you know, be that sidekick to Zach in the front court. You know, I think you saw some comments from Coach Painter in one of his interviews where I think he said he had some regrets maybe, or wish he had the opportunity to try to get Trey Kaufman-Renn up to speed a little bit more from a defensive standpoint as far as guarding the 4, being more comfortable on the perimeter. You know, maybe that's him hinting at that he likes the idea of maybe Trey playing some more 4. You know, he's probably the most skilled offensively of those 3 guys as far as just pure offensive talent from a scoring standpoint, and maybe even, you know, a playmaking ball handling standpoint. So, you know, for a guy who played pretty much all 5 back at 5 last year, maybe we see Trey make a big jump in the offseason and find him, you know, playing some 4 next year. But yeah, I mean, those 3 guys, man, it's going to be great competition to see who's going to, you know, kind of step up as that second guy. And then the other 2 guys, whoever, you know, doesn't ascend out of that group are going to play their roles off the bench. And, you know, basically all 3 of those guys now have lots of experience, particularly Caleb and Mason, and you're going to have a really steady group there.
Right.
And with that,
go ahead.
I was going to say, with that, like, and I can't really recall. So if one of you guys do know, definitely jump in. Like, did Painter kind of tinker? Like, does he use the early season kind of bye games as to tinker? Like, is that a thing he's done in the past? Of okay, let's try this lineup type stuff. He's done that because that's what I think he'll do.
That he does it mostly. He does it a lot in practice, where he'll like, okay, on Monday Zach and Trey are together, and Caleb and Mason are together. Then Tuesday, Caleb and Zach are together, and Trey, like, he'll do that all the time as far as shuffling, and he does it with the backcourt as well. And he does that like for those full 2 months in the preseason, those inter-squad scrimmages, like they'll play 3 10-minute scrimmages, and there's different front court combinations in all 3. You know, so he's always looking, like he tried that, of course, with everyone, you know, when they would clamor for the like Zach and Travion together, or Isaac and Hammonds together. Caleb. Like Yeah, Caleb, like he would try all those combinations.
Yeah,
and
he
those.
did that.
And I think, as he would tell the media, like, hey, I tried it. And, when we would watch the film back and just watch the production, it wasn't up to, what we would hope to see. And a lot of times he would talk about if it was a half-court game, it would work out great. But from a full-court standpoint, transition D, things of that nature, he just didn't like it. So, he'll try all those things out. He'll tinker a lot in the preseason.
Okay.
Yeah.
And especially in the second half of games too. Sorry,
Yeah,
Craig.
definitely.
Like he I don't feel like he tinkers early in the season that much. In the first half, he's like getting these guys chemistry that are going to play, and then in the second half is when you start to see different, lineups out there because they're presumably smoking whoever they're playing. So sorry, Craig, go ahead.
Yeah, but there was one year coming into the season where he was adamant about trying the two bigs. Was that Caleb and Isaac?
Yeah, he started that year. He started Caleb's last year, or I think it was Caleb's the last year. I think Isaac and Caleb did start some. Eventually, he ended up moving to where Caleb was just having too much success as the 5.
And then there was a game. There was a game late in the season where we were getting like blown out by like maybe 20 or something, and he put them back in together and was like, "Let's try it one more time."
I think Caleb's freshman year. Hammonds was solidified at the 5 at that point, and so he went with Caleb as the starting 4 because Caleb was McDonald's All-American, obviously highly touted, and was kind of just too talented not to start with AJ, even though Caleb's natural position was probably the 5. That probably is the season you're thinking of where those two guys played a lot in the front court together, even though they weren't super compatible.
And I think he tried Travion and Zach for about 3.5 seconds once, even though everybody asked for it all the time.
And against Michigan when Purdue was down like 30.
But I think the biggest question in regards to that is what happens to TKR minutes. Because we've seen what he can do offensively. Painter has openly said multiple times in interviews that he needs to get TKR more minutes. But how do you do that with Zach? And then we saw, I think especially in the second half of the season, a few more times where he played TKR and Zach together when he was kind of trying to just find ways to manufacture points at different times. And there was a few times it really worked, just, playing that big to big in different situations. So like, I think that's the biggest question is, does TKR really grow in minutes? Because I mean, Gillis and First primarily have played the 4. First has played a little bit of 5, but primarily played the 4. So does TKR grow more into playing more minutes at the 4? And does Caleb and Mason lose some of those minutes there? Or, where does that go? And if this team's biggest concern is how do we score points at certain times, maybe we see a little bit more of that. And I've had a lot of people ask me, Bobby, and I'll ask you this. Also, I was a little bit confused because you said something about Cam at the 4. And there's this guy that comes on our show regularly that's around the team really closely. And at one point, he told me he'd only seen Cam play with the guards in practice. So I don't know who that guy is. So not going to call him out.
He was a guy. He was a guy with shorter hair than Bobby.
Yeah, he had shorter hair than the guy on the show right now. But can Gillis play the 3? I've had that asked to me a lot of times. He's only he's bulky, but he's 6'6". He can bang down threes. Do we still see Gillis pushing up to the 3 at all, into that guard spot at all? Do you really think Cam's going to play the 4 in some points?
I think Cam he's athletic enough and he's big enough at his size, especially now another year in the weight room, and because if he was, say, playing alongside a guy like Zach, because Zach is such an elite rebounder at the 5 spot, I think you could get away with having a 4 like Cam, who maybe isn't quite as good a rebounder for his position, but it still has good size and athleticism and maybe, more ball handling, shooting ability at that spot than a Caleb or a Mason or a Trey. And that if you wanted to go small and have more skill on the floor around Zach, that would be a small ball look. Obviously, Caleb and Trey are all very good players too. So that's the conundrum you have as a coach, of course, is what lineups to put out there. But no, Cam has worked predominantly as a 3 But, a guy like Ethan, who's played some spot minutes at the 4 in the past when coach decided to go small. I think, we've seen our team, unfortunately, as far as like the Mason at the 3 spot. Like, I love Mason. I love a lot of what he brings, but great ball handling and passing, I wouldn't say are his strengths necessarily as a player. And we've seen Purdue as a team struggle, I think, at times facing perimeter pressure defense, full court pressure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure you want to make your team less creative at the 3 spot from a ball handling and passing standpoint than what we already have been the last couple of years. Obviously, it's matchup dependent. If you're playing a half court team where you're not to have as much ball handling from a full court pressure standpoint, then yes, you could maybe get away with it. But
right.
No, I don't think you would see. I think you'd be much more possible to see a Cam or Ethan play the 4 than it would be for Mason to play the 3.
Right. And again, this is Boilers in the Stands, and Kraig and I are men of the people, and we are going to bring the fans' questions forward. And I have had that asked to me so many times. I just wanted somebody to give a reasonable response that they might believe more than me on air to say, no, he's not going to play the 3.
Right. Our guy, Jeremy Frank, who is works for the Cubs, analytical guy. I know a good friend with Joe, good friends with Joe and Aiden. Wanted to know expectations from Berg. I mean, that's what everybody wants to know is TKR and Berg. Yeah, I think it's definitely a fair question. Can TKR slide to the 4? I was screaming for it all year last year. To me, I didn't know TKR was such a predominant post guy until last year. I thought he was going to be this stretch type of big that could shoot threes, and I didn't think he shot enough of them last year. Just from what I had initially saw the first time he was practicing with the team, and I'd see him in the scrimmages before he got redshirted, and then this year before the season started, I thought he would shoot a lot more threes than he did, and it was like he was basically mini Edey the amount of times they'd feed him in the post, and he was very good and held his own. But definitely, I think it's a fair question, especially when you consider how Mason and First went cold to end the year. They're both capable. And they're all capable, but you got to find the guy that's going to play with the most confidence. And I think competition between those guys is what has the best chance of getting that out of them.
Yeah, I think, obviously Zach is the best player on the team. And so you have to surround him. In a perfect world, you have to surround him with as many shot makers as possible and as much skill as possible. To be your best from an offensive lineup standpoint. And so, yeah, the guys who kind of can prove that they can, that's kind of why Mason was able to kind of get back that starting role towards the end of the year, because I just think of those guys, he was the one who was stepping up. Of course, he made the 9 threes at home against Penn State. He was the one who was at least ascending of that group and showing he was making open shots at the highest clip. And I think that's why he eventually, earned that starting spot to close the season. So, yeah, certainly if Trey Kaufman-Renn can make threes at a higher percentage, that's going to give him a better chance to play alongside Zach. Because you're right, yeah, we basically saw him with those back to the basket the majority of the time he played. I mean, he was even given, I think one, on the road at Michigan, he was given Hunter Dickinson buckets, and he definitely has a knack for scoring the ball on the block. But I also think he's probably the best ball handler potentially of those 3 guys. And as far as making a move and attacking a closeout, 1 or 2 dribbles, spin, get to that hook. I think he's got probably the most creative scoring ability of those 3 guys as far as, scoring, attacking, that sort of thing. And so we'll see. We haven't seen a lot of it, but that is where I think there is potential for him to earn some of those minutes at the 4 if you're trying to get as much talent around Zach as possible from an offensive standpoint.
Well, do you guys have anything more for Bobby before we cut him loose? We joke it. I think we said in our pre-production, we're like, oh, maybe 45 minutes. We always know that these shows are going to go twice as long, if not 3 times as long, especially since we haven't been around for a couple months. And this is such an exciting night. So, Bobby, we really appreciate you coming on such short notice, getting home from your kids' practice, summertime vibes. I'd still like for us to go to a Cubs game this summer, see if we can fit that into the schedule.
I want to ask Jeremy why we can't get a runner in from third with less than 2 outs ever.
Today's loss was
Can Jeremy
brutal.
tell us that?
Today was a tough loss. Today, they had a good series against the Rays, but
I needed the Zach
today
news to lift my spirits after the Cubbies couldn't,
Well, and I got to figure out where Matt Painter's season tickets are so I can run him down while I'm at Wrigley.
That's exactly what he wants.
That's why he doesn't want to tell me where they're
I'm
at.
the
I'll be
caller,
like sitting next to him, like
he said he'd go to a game with us, Greg.
Well,
when we talked to him.
Let's hold him up
get
to
together
it,
and go to a game.
He was. Let's hold him to it. Well, might have a better chance for him to meet up for a beer at Murphy's if Bobby.
Once my boys' baseball season's over, I'm hitting you up, Rags.
When is that? Let's start planning it now. When is that?
I think they finish in end of June.
End of June. All right, I'll start looking into tickets.
Start looking at July and August.
All right. August is going to be busy Bears month, so maybe we got to do it sometime in July. We'll figure it out, as I like to say. Do you guys have anything
Craig's
else?
really excited.
Greg's so important. Greg is so important these days.
I'm a busy man, Craig, all right? Yeah. Lot to do. So little time. Do you guys have anything else for Bobby before we cut him loose?
Over under 25 threes made for Edey next year. 25 and a half.
Under. You made that easy on him.
Yeah, I gotta go under on that, Joe.
Okay.
I would love to see over. That would be sick. If Edey's launching threes and Bellingham and Mackey,
that'd be so fun.
Well, last year, when they clinched the Big Ten title, he was open a couple times, and the Mackey crowd was begging him to shoot it. We're sitting there joking like, if he shoots that, Painter's gonna lose it. Little did we know, Sasha had kind of hinted at it that this dude can drain him, so he should have shot it. What the heck?
He was making NBA threes pretty effortlessly. So
if you say over under on that number from 15 feet, I'll take it.
I'd almost rather him shoot an open three though versus a 15-foot. Really.
Yeah, I would.
As far as the analytics go.
Damn analytics. All right, Bobby. Thank you again for coming on, being our special guest for an exciting night. Boilers fans have been waiting all day, feverishly refreshing Twitter to see the update, and we finally got it at a pretty decent time. We were worried the announcement would come around right now. So Zach was nice enough to give us a little bit of a buffer time so we could get this in at a decent hour. So, Bob, really appreciate everything you do, as always, for us, and appreciate your hard work with Purdue Men's Basketball Radio, and we look forward to talking to you real soon.
Appreciate you guys having me, and next year is going to be a blast. Can't wait.
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
appreciate you coming on.
Have a good night, Bobby, and tell the lovely family we said hello.
Yeah.
Yep.
We'll do.
Boiler up. There it is. Bobby Riddell doing his thing. Bobby Buckets coming on here. Boilers in the stands on short notice to give you guys some instant analysis.
Yeah. Do we want to get through some comments with that?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Comments. Like, if you have comments, questions, definitely throw them in now. We'll kind of get through this.
Yeah, last chance for comments. I'll run through some of the starred comments that we have already.
Hey, we need to throw out some thanks to the fans who've been in, because this show has been like, for not being during the regular season, 170 plus fans on the show for a large part of it. Just, I think we hit over 200 at one point. Thank you guys for tuning in. Appreciate that. Love all the comments about how much you guys have missed us and wanted us to come on and talk Purdue basketball. We missed you too. At least Joe and I did. I don't know about Greg, but Joe and I missed you.
No, I don't miss any of you people. I needed a damn break. No, I'm kidding. I'm excited. I was nervous that we were going to have to do a show about Zach leaving, and then I was going to have to pretend that I'm happy for him going to the NBA and pursuing his dreams when I selfishly want him to play for Purdue so I can watch him dominate at Mackey Arena next year. But we got what we wanted, and so now I'm very happy because, with the players that are coming in this year, next year, Zach to come back for this season is huge for this program to keep it at this level that it's been at here for the last few years. Now, will they slay the dragon? Will they achieve the goals that we will all want them to? We'll see. But we know damn well they're going to be a good team, a tough team to beat every night.
Yep.
And they're going to win more times than not. And they're going to come ready to play. And now they're coming with a little more experience than they did last year. And that's going to make them even tougher. And you bring in that instant energy with Miles Colvin and Camden Heide. It's just going to be an exciting, countdown is on to November. Sydney jokingly said, hopefully by November I can trust them again. Hey, it's hope.
We're all there.
Hope springs eternal.
I'm
So
there.
as soon as the
Right.
season starts, you'll fall back in love with the gang, and then we'll ride the journey along with everybody else. The journey is more fun than the destination.
And
Just always
before
remember
everybody
that.
goes nuts on national media for the entire regular season, they're going to question our ability to perform in March. That's going to happen. And they have the right to say that after the last 3 seasons. So like just don't even go into this year expecting to get mad at ESPN, Fox, CBS, Field of
Right.
68, whoever, for questioning whether we can perform in March, because until we prove otherwise, they get the right to ask that question. And
Just
that's
take
fair.
a shot every time they play the Fairleigh Dickinson highlights. You'll be drunk pretty much every night that they play, because you're going to have to see this stuff. I mean, Purdue's going to have to wear that until they can break the curse. At the end of the day, that's what it is. I've lived that as a Cub fan
Yeah.
with the Bartman episode and everything else, all the bad moments they've had.
Right.
And one day they slayed the dragon. So, that's their goal. And Zach's coming back for some redemption. I think, Greg Waddell mentioned it in his quote. Bobby started that off with what he said, that we all carry this same sentiment. That's what it is. So the national media is going to talk about it. We might get to a point where we don't want to talk about that anymore, but at the end of the day, that is the story of this team. Can they overcome one of the worst losses in college basketball history? That's what it is. And you have to face it. You can't hide from it, because IU fans are going to remind you of it every day of your life. So you might as well just face it and stare at it and hope you can break it down. I like Brian Graham's comment. Can they break the press? Because I had some people, or we did have a comment in the chat, which was a pretty large ask, I felt like, because he said, I don't see it anymore. Oh, Ed Collins said, could you gentlemen review each player on the team and tell us what you expect from each next season? And
Well,
we
Joe
would love
and
to do that, but Joe and Kraig have already planned doing a preview of the Big Ten, including Purdue, but the entire Big Ten, and they're going to do a few teams each episode. And that's where when they cover, maybe the Purdue one will just be by itself, and then the other ones will be split up into groups of the Big Ten. Kraig and Joe are going to have that handled. I might pop in. I'm not going to bring too much to that conversation. I leave the expertise to these gentlemen here that do a lot of hard work and analysis, and I just kind of banter and do my rants. That's what I do here. So I may pop in, especially for the Purdue one, but these guys are going to be breaking that down, and they'll do a Purdue one where they break the team down and their schedule and everything else that they have planned. So that will come. Tonight was the night to celebrate the return of Zach Edey and how that impacts this team. So I think
one thing
here.
with that, he brings it up, previewing each team or each player specifically on the team. I kind of did something like that in the offseason last year. We've talked about kind of adding this writing component to Boilers in the Stands. That could be something we do there, as break down each player, like an article for each player during the offseason. We don't have anything set in stone, no promises on timeline. I think that's something we do want to do. And if you guys do think that you would like kind of this article, writing components, maybe and digging in for my articles, like digging into film and numbers more and just the analysis in general that we have. If that's something you guys do think you'd be interested in, let us know. Because I know we are kind of toying with that idea as well. So that could be an area where you would be able to see all the player breakdowns kind of individually.
And
We've
for
got
you
a lot of
fans
big
watching,
plans, and it's just
for you
about these
fans-
two convincing me to actually do something about it.
for you fans watching, we get to talk so little that half the time we decide what we're going to do while we're on the show together right now.
Well, and every time they ask me, like, Greg, can we do this or this? I'm like, yeah, sure. Get back to me in 2 weeks. I'm in the pool. So we'll get to it. We got a lot of big plans. We're talking about football coverage. Craig's going to spearhead that. Talking about getting a website up with written articles. Joe's going to spearhead that. I'm just going to sit back and do nothing is my plan. No, I'm going to try to help as best I can. And so we're going to try to give you guys, we're going to try to up the ante with the coverage here this year. We brought in sponsors and trying to do some different things. Keep on the lookout for Boilers in the Stands push here as the season goes. Got to give a shout out to my good friend Kyle. This was the best man at my wedding. He has known me the longest. He said, good job, Blue Eyes. He says that facetiously because he gets tired of everyone complimenting my blue eyes. He's known me since kindergarten. He was my neighbor down the street. So he chimed in, said, first time chatter, long time friend. Braggs, why can't you get a fitted hat yet? Edey is back. Exciting night. I like my snapbacks, Kyle. Yeah. Thank you very much. But we appreciate you tuning in. Good friend of mine.
But Greg, you didn't give the biggest news of the night related to your family yet.
Yeah, it's my daughter's 5th birthday.
That's exciting, man. That's exciting.
No, it's not. It irritates me. She's getting too big. I hate it. She's a whole hand now. She's not my baby anymore. She's a kid, and I hate it. But I'm happy for her, I guess. And she's got a bunch of presents that she doesn't care. She's like, oh, and then just chucks it and opens the next present. I'm like, this is a charade. I'm like, come on now, but she is a carbon copy of me. I'm very proud of her. She's getting so big. She's very funny and smart and beautiful. And we swim every day. We'll be swimming tomorrow, Friday, Saturday. So that's where you can find us. So Addison, shout out to you. One day, Braggs in the Stands will be yours. That's my gift to you, is this network. Okay. Something like that. We'll see.
So you're going to go through this window, though. I went through this same window, Greg, where I was like, oh, like my kid was awesome when they're little, and now they're this age. And then, like, my daughter's 18 now, 19. She just turned 19. And she's awesome again.
Yeah.
So, okay. There's just that gap in the middle, but you'll get there.
Yeah. Well, I can't remember what comedian said it, but they were like, there's a period of your life where your child becomes an alien and you don't know who they are. then they return back to Earth. So right. I know that moment's coming, and she's going to give me a run for my money, because I know I certainly did with my mom, who was also in the chat tonight. Dick Stillwagon was very active in the chat tonight. We appreciate everybody hanging out. Said, handsome hour starting. Love them too. Love you guys more. We appreciate it, Dick. And it certainly was a handsome hour. Shout out to Zach Edey for giving the announcement at 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern, because this could have gone much later into the night. Dick also said, missed you, Sydney. Start making hats. Giving Joe's girlfriend a shout out. Needs to start getting back to those basketball net hats. Get to work. Get some Zach Edey hats out there. Something. But we appreciate you tuning in, Dick. Derek Mulliken brought up a great point. He said, and maybe you guys want to touch on this, Craig, you can react to it, but he said the expectations will be as high as ever for Painter. So we can't use this year's, well, we are better than we thought anyway. Time to show up if you're Matt Painter. And I agree. Last year was this was a rebuild year. They're exceeding expectations. That I thought they were, when they lost in the tragic form they did, and the way they were mocked by everyone for it, I thought they were a victim of their own success. They had exceeded expectations so greatly that then they got set up for the worst loss in college basketball history and were widely mocked for it when they should have been given credit for winning the Big Ten tournament over teams that they were picked. They were going to finish 6th or 7th in the Big Ten, and 2 starting freshman guard led them to a season above Michigan State and Michigan and IU and Illinois and all these teams that were hyped preseason. So, when our guy from Sleepers Media, says Michigan State, because that's going to be the new hot team this year that everyone's going to want to pick. Carter Elliott's a big Michigan State guy. We get it. He's going to want everyone's going to be talking up Michigan State because of the run they made in the tournament. But Big Ten play is different than tournament play. So everyone's going to pick Michigan State. No. Maybe not everyone. But I even saw somebody, Kraig, you were pushing back on Assembly Hall, right? They tweeted something about
Assembly Call.
Assembly
Hall is a stadium.
Yeah, the stadium. Assembly Call, our guys at Assembly Call, Brian Tonsoni, good friend of ours, good friend of the show.
Yeah.
He said prohibitive favorite. You're not Brian, but the person that runs Assembly Call's account.
Clear favorite.
Clear favorite is Michigan State. And granted, that was an hour before Zach Edey announced his return, but they're going to be the hot team. They're going to be the ones preseason picked, even though Purdue has proven what they are. So, to your reaction as far as Derek's assessment that this is the no more excuses year for Matt Painter.
I mean, I don't think this is the first time that we could say that. Like, I mean, Jaden come back for his sophomore year in that team. You could have said that too. So I don't know. I don't know that this is new, but I think that is real. This is certainly a scenario where they're not coming in and flying under the radar in any type of situation. And I don't know about you guys, but I think we can all go back and look at my tweets at the beginning of the year last year and see that I also picked us to win the Big Ten last year. Joe and Greg will validate that.
It's right pinned on your Twitter, I think.
Right. Yeah. No, like this is a different situation this year, and they have to perform. You get the National Player of the Year back. You get a point guard that was a freshman last year. And I don't give a shit what anybody says about Braden Smith in a couple of games last year, one of which was in the tournament, which was probably his worst game of the entire year. That dude did things in the Big Ten that people haven't done as freshman point guards in the Big Ten in 25 years. Like, he is insanely good. He did insanely good things as a freshman point guard in the Big Ten. He is going to be a big-time player. And probably our second biggest name on this team coming into next year. So, I mean, Painter doesn't have excuses going into this year. He's got to figure out a way to do it. He's got to figure out a way to get past those 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 seeds. And it's not even a matter of the round. It's not like we have to get past the first round, second round. We got to go by those teams that are super quick, super small, super fast, and can abuse our bigs. That's what we have to do.
Joe, any quick thoughts in regards to this being a no more excuses year for Matt Painter?
Yeah. I think I agree. It's last year you had the element of surprise of unranked or whatever. Some people had him top 25, whatever it was. You just kind of took the country by storm at PK 85, and it was just like, oh wow, this Purdue team's legit. And now we know in what is it? It's May 31st, so we know in May, like, hey, this team should be legitimate. This team is Purdue should probably be top 5, I assume, by most rankings coming into the year, top 8 at the worst. And especially that's where the ranking thing is weird, where it's like you're ranking for the regular season, and then the biggest detriment, right, is the postseason success. Purdue's got to get past it. I think they're going to be better equipped this year. I think Painter's, I know the Painter gets a lot of hates. He also gets a lot of love, but I just truly think he's going to be malleable this year. I think he's going to be willing to try different things if needed, because your most dominant offense, I think, is still the most dominant Purdue offense will probably still be a very similar offense to last year. However, when Edey can't get the ball, then what happens? And I think they're going to be better prepared for that. If you do that, now you have a better chance of actually going far. This overall don't really have the excuse of like, oh, this team shouldn't have even been here type thing. Like this
Right.
team should be there. This team should compete for a Final Four. This team should compete for a championship.
And to Joe's point, I've heard Painter say more since that loss about I have to reevaluate what I'm doing. We're not athletic enough. I've heard him admit things and speak in a way that I've never heard him speak. People point to that year with Carson and his last year at Purdue where he really adapted and changed, but he had no choice, right? Like he didn't have a choice other than just say like, you know what, Carson, go friggin' crazy because that's all you had on that team in reality. And then you had Ryan Klein, who could also just go crazy and shoot from three, and Carson could do a little bit more outside of just shooting threes. But I feel like he's openly evaluating himself, maybe admitting that his recruiting philosophy, that he needs to add a different component to that for the first time. I've heard him say in some interviews before, we just need to do what we do better. You would hear him say that a lot. Like you'd watch that team get beat in a situation and be like, we need this player, that player. And then you listen to the interview and he'd say, no, we just need to do what we do better and dominate our side better. And after this season, that's the first time I've really heard him talk about, no, we've got to get more athletic. Maybe I need to like reevaluate exactly the pieces on the team more so than just how we operate once I have those pieces on the team.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how Matt Painter approaches this. He understands the elephant in the room just as much as Boilers fans do, and that's the early round failures in March, the losing to very low-seeded teams here the last few years. He knows, and he's trying to fix it. He wants what we all want as fans as much as anyone. So I'm rooting for him to get it done, and I'm a big Matt Painter believer. So maybe we'll convince him to come back on the show.
Yeah.
To quickly wrap things up, Dick also asked, where is Purdue in the way too early top 25 now? I think we all said certainly top 10, but a very good chance they'll be top 5.
Yeah, no, top 5.
Yeah,
it's not even a question.
They'll be top 5, and Michigan State won't be far behind them. So it's going to be an interesting year.
Maybe in front.
Yeah. Well, I honestly, I hope they put them in front. Let's see how it goes. Boiler in Texas, appreciate you hanging out with us tonight. It said, I think the biggest decider on how him taking jumpers is actually how well he could pass out of it with potential cutters. That's a good point. And then I think the other aspect of this, when you talk about the money for Zach Edey that he's getting, it's also about the money he generates to this program. And that's a big factor. You're seeing it in our chat here tonight. Dick Stillwagon, Maui Challenge is going to be lit. Now I'm going to Hawaii, he says. Booking rooms in Maui. Matt Bannon echoing this. Booking my room for Toronto. Boiler up. So there you go. I mean, immediately from this reaction alone, from this announcement alone, you're now having fans booking trips to travel around the world to see the Purdue Boilermakers play. That is certainly a big thing. So, Purdue is lucky to have Zach Edey, a great ambassador to this program. Wanted to give a shout out to our guys at ISC Purdue, Indiana Sports Coverage. Make sure you follow them at ISC_Purdue, at ISC_PU. These are images that they provide for us here a lot of times here on our show when we don't get our pictures. They provide some of the best pictures for Purdue sports that has to offer. So make sure you're following their coverage as well. This is one of the best pictures in the game that I've seen. Great shot from those guys. So we look forward to more block shots from our guy, Zach. The Zach attack is back. Return of the Zach.
I wanted to tell you, I thought that was an underrated tweet, dude. I saw that when you were talking. I was trolling through, and I was like, "Oh, Bragg sent return of the Zach." Like that's You should have got more love off that.
Well, we used it a lot when the Bears traded for Khalil Mack. Return of the Mack was played a lot for our guy Khalil Mack. So return of the Zach was the first thing that came to mind. Excited. I know how close he and Ethan Morton are. All those guys, Jared Wolburn also in this picture, assistant coach for the team. I know how close this whole team is, including these three guys. Excited for them, happy for them. Zach Edey was signed my baby famous last year, so his star will only continue to shine. And let's see him bring back another 26th Big Ten championship and extend that lead in conference championships over Indiana, who I think has 22. So, don't take those moments for granted. We all want March success, but this is the moments you live for right here. Gene Katie and Zach Edey shaking hands. So, once again, shout out to our guy Aiden Kuntz, who will not be on our shows here going forward. And he will be sorely missed. His analysis is as good as it gets, but he's moved on to become a graduate assistant for Incarnate Word. So we are really excited for Aiden. Big things on the horizon for him and everyone, over there. So they'll be getting our support as long as they're not playing Purdue. But we're excited what we're doing here. Like I said, a lot of big announcements to come here at Boilers in the Stands. So make sure you're tuned in. We're going to have a Big Ten preview summer series brought to you by Kraig and Joe here. They're going to be giving some great analysis of Purdue and the rest of the Big Ten. So make sure you stay on the lookout for those announcements for when those shows are coming. Make sure you like and subscribe, our shows, and subscribe to our YouTube page as it continues to grow. And that's how you'll know when the next shows are coming, or follow us on Twitter, on Facebook for updates. So I think that wraps things up for tonight. Do you guys got anything else before we cut it loose?
I do. Couple things. This is from Cobra Stats on Twitter. Everybody go follow him if you aren't already. Great stats, some deep dive analytics, but also just some fun stats. He sent me these, told me I could use them. So with Zach Edey returning, Purdue is returning 169 out of their 175 starts on the year. That's 96.6% of their starts, which is the second highest in the last 50 years. The 1998 team returned all of their starters. Edey is currently 9th in total rebounds at Purdue at 847, matching last year's 438, would put him at 1,285, which would be 137 ahead of Purdue career leader Joe Barry Carroll. So potentially all-time rebounding leader. He's 23rd in points, 1533. Rick Mount's first place of 2323. If he scores 757, he would be at 2290. Solidly in second place. 791 would allow him to be Purdue's all-time leading scorer. So just some fun stuff for Edey kind of going in, some mile markers if he has this another dominant year of that could come. And those are from Cobra Stats, like I said, on Twitter. My last thing, we talked about the jumpers, we talked about the defense, and more pick and roll, and I think all that is great, and all that is going to need to be talked about. The one thing I feel like we didn't talk about too much, we brought up a little bit with the 70% at the rim, is Zach Edey is going to have a whole nother year with the best big man developing coach and coaching staff in the entire country. A guy that's played, 5-6 years now, was dominant in the post and at the rim last year. He has a whole nother summer and season coming up developing under those guys. Like that's kind of a scary thought, I think, for other Big Ten teams as well, in addition to any other, the shooting and the pick and rolls and all that kind of come with this.
And no Trace Jackson Davis, no Hunter Dickinson.
Yep.
So good luck to you, Big Ten. It's going to be a long season, and you're going to have to deal with the force to be reckoned with. That is Zach Edey. Go ahead, Kraig.
Joe, did you buy a new house?
No.
The background is different. Like, I'm just confused right now.
I'm at my parents' house in Northwest Indiana for a few days.
Okay.
Yeah, finishing up.
Okay.
Got a
you
few
you
more weeks of
you
grad
up in the
school.
region? Up in the
I am.
region around Greg?
I am. He's just a town over.
I got you.
So, yep. Couple
Well,
weeks of grad
hey,
school left, and then I'm done.
nice. Icy Mike asked us if anything was going to change in regards to the ball because we talked about balls so much last year. And to answer your question quick, Icy Mike, no, because the NCAA is friggin' stupid and still lets conferences and teams pick what ball they play with and doesn't have a standard ball for the entire institution that is NCAA basketball. So you get to deal with us talking about balls again all year next year.
Well, that's getting clipped. So
basketballs.
Yeah, you're talking about balls. That's all right. No, Chubbs is my guy. He's in the chat. He's an Illinois fan. Nobody's perfect. He's trying to stir everybody up as we end this show. Chubbs, I'll argue with you on Twitter, but don't you worry about Purdue. We'll be just fine over here. Worry about your own team and your coaching staff. Don't worry about us.
They don't even have a point guard as of right now. They have no point guard.
Yeah,
Well,
Gibbs.
They technically have Nicola Moretti.
And they got Gibbs
international
Longhorn.
from Nicola Moretti's from Italy. Played decent at the U17 for Italy. Don't love the jumper yet, but he is very much a true point guard.
Dad Hoosier
don't think
says
he'll be given too much.
Dad Hoosier says Purdue should hire Chubbs. He's got all the answers. Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Him and Dan Dockich on the staff, right?
Chubbs and then Dan Dockich as an assistant coach or the public relations guy for the team. I think that would go over real well. No, but we appreciate Chubbs jumping in, even though he drives me crazy. But Purdue just beats Illinois every year, so I don't really have to worry about it. And then the one time they win, he never leaves me alone about it. So, but it'll be fun to watch the Gibbs Longhorn rivalry with Purdue fans here over the next few years. So a big year for the Big Ten coming up for Big Ten basketball. So we look forward to it all. That wraps things up here tonight. Thank you for tuning in. A little 2-hour special for the return of the Zach. Zach Edey returns.
Just can't let it go, can you? Have to say it again.
Mackey Arena, return to the Mac, return of the Zach. I love it. There's a lot you can do with that. There's a lot. Maybe we should make a music video with the three of us. I'm sure. I'm
gonna send my
play.
I'm gonna send my Purdue creative friends a text with
get Chris on this. Let him put a little bug in his ear. Like, look, we got an idea, a music video with the Boilers in the Stands crew. There's no way that won't be used on the internet to make fun of us. So, all right, guys, have a good night. Thank you again to everyone that tuned in. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to our YouTube page channel, and follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Keep on the lookout for updates as they come. For Kraig Bowers, for Joe Jackson, I'm Greg Braggs Jr. This is Boilers in the Stand. Zach Edey is back. Boiler up.